Thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that now. I would like to first of all thank everyone for joining. Today we're going to be exploring how we can create confident consumers with the help of Pimberly's new auto sizing feature. So, first of all, as we begin, it's worth mentioning that Pimberly is the first PIM to release a feature of this nature. It's been designed and created by our Manchester-based developers to allow retailers to take the next step in publishing the most accurate and timely product information for their online stores. First of all, here we have some statistics. This showcases the many millions of dollars that are missed with customers not converting at the checkout and are spent on dealing with product returns. For example, the Baymard Institute compiled a list of studies and discovered that nearly 70% of carts are abandoned at the checkout stage. Similarly, the National Retail Federation found that over 12% of apparel products are returned, resulting in over $100 million worth of product returns for every $1 billion in sales revenue. We all know there's an increasing consumer demand in accurate, up-to-date, and easily available product information when shopping online. There's a huge competitive edge towards the retailer who can provide all of the relevant details over the retailer who has the bare minimum. And if this information can be presented visually, then even better. Typically, the only process around creating sizing charts is long, manual, and costly, and so usually limited to only certain products, if ever created at all. Controlled at parent level, the process around creating these visuals within Pimberly is quick, easy to manage, and powerful in increasing conversion rates and minimizing product returns. We all know that high return rates can be costly, and receiving products that don't match the consumer's expectations can be damaging to both brand loyalty and returning custom. So there are many reasons why creating confident consumers through Pimberly's auto sizing charts will only see online revenue growth. So, what do these charts look like, and how do we need to prepare our data to make this process fast, effective, and powerful? In this quick demonstration, we'll be covering the following: storing data sets of information in Pimberly, using life cycles to ensure quality of information, how users can go about enriching products, the approval workflow process that goes around it, the use of Pimberly's integrated DAM, digital asset management tool. And as I'm covering these points, we're looking at both how this impacts both the user's view and ultimately, and more importantly, the end consumers. So, before we dive into Pimberly itself, I just wanted to show a typical example of what a product website or a web store would look like. So here we've got a basic product. We've got a long sleeve shirt, and then we've got all the information you'd typically expect. We've got a couple of images, we've got the price, there's drop downs for color and size, it's a little bit of a description around the product and material composition, and some logos and icons as well. But the obvious point here is, a customer can see the website, they might like the product, it's got the bare information that they need, and they know roughly what size they are. But we all know, particularly in the world of fashion, that products and sizes can all come in different flavors and versions. So the customer themselves might know that they're typically a medium, or they might check out both. They might select the large and click between the two. But this is ultimately just a guess. The majority of websites have just as much information as this. Some of them might have sizing and dimensions actually in the text itself, but this isn't reflective or does change when they're clicking between the different variants. So this is what we set out to change within Pimberly. So to show you how this works, if we go across into Pimberly, and this is the screen share I'll go over shortly, this is Pimberly itself. So if we think about all the dimensions and information that we need to produce these sizing charts, this is all stored within the background of Pimberly. Often our customers will have a variety of different data sets within here to look after different product types. In this example, we're talking about shirts, but it can be used for any. So just to show you how this works, so a data set is essentially a bunch of information that can be used in other parts of the PIM. So these could be the sizes. Here we've got extra, extra large through to extra small. And we have different columns of information, which is actually the dimensions that will be used on the sizing charts later. Where we've got columns A, B, and C, this will become clear how that data gets utilized later. So it's important to bear this in mind, and I'll explain back as we go. The second part I mentioned on the slide earlier is around how we'll use life cycles to ensure the quality of the information that we're outputting. I've just got an example life cycle stage here to show you. Customers have different setups and configurations of this. Everything we're looking at in Pimberly is configurable. But this life cycle stage is ensuring that products follow a predetermined path through the platform. In this case, it's coming through a newly onboarded, categorization, have we got all the relevant photography done? And more importantly for this stage, enrichment itself. And we can see each of these stages have criteria within them. So it must meet this criteria before the product can flow through. And in my example of enrichment, other than the actual marketing copy, which we know we've had when we looked at that web page, a product must have a size code allocated and it must be approved before it can be ultimately deemed ready. So this life cycle is ensuring you haven't got a scenario where products are being released live, but they're missing key parts of the data. So how does this work for users within the PIM? So if we go over to the product section over here, let's filter down and grab an example product to talk through. So here we've got a long sleeve shirt, just like the one we looked at on that web store. Up at the top, we've got the parent level, and then the different sizes or variants that can come in. But right up here at the parent, if I open this record as an example, all of the information that we saw on that store, the title, the marketing copy, logos, and so forth, are all driven from the PIM, along with those digital assets. So these are the two images that are on that web store, but we've also got some sizing charts as well. This is just a template that we put together for the purposes of a demonstration. But when I mentioned that data set earlier with those columns and values, this is where this information is being pulled from. So I've got those sizes, XXL through to extra small, and these different columns of data, A, B, and C, which I mentioned earlier, that reflects the different dimensions on the sizing chart. So column A reverts to length, column B to chest, column C to waist, and so on. I'll explain this later, but these can, of course, be configured depending on the product. You might have shoes and jumpers, for example, and trousers, and you can have different templates and data sets to look after them. But here are all the actual dimensions for these different size shirts, and this tells the customer what that reference is. So if we drop down into the child level where the actual variant information is stored, so we could pick XXL, for example. So all the information for that variant is within the product view here. But how does this work from a user's point of view? We need to keep this nice and simple. So if you're onboarding new members of the team who need to enrich product data, they don't have to get up to speed. It's quite simple. They could select within here what size code or what we're talking about. Extra, extra large, they could flag that, for example. Once that's been ticked, Pimberly will reference that data set and it knows what type of products we're talking about. So it can go ahead and automatically publish and populate these weights and dimensions. That data set we mentioned can just be a spreadsheet loaded into the PIM and that can be updated anytime. But it means users don't have to go through and you're reducing the risk of error in terms of populating this information, which can be another cause of returns if you've got users entering information in wrong. So the user selects what size code we're talking about, and then workflows can notify the relevant team. I touched on approval workflows and steps earlier. So once that's been done, user comes into the system and flags that. And this could go off, notify a user of the relevant department to come in, check out this information, make sure it looks about right and they're happy with the rest of the product content, and they could approve it. We could see that this box is now ticked to green because it meets that life cycle criteria that we mentioned. And they might also flag as well, and it depends on the business and what their process is. But for example, the e-commerce or marketing teams might have approved the product, and Pimberly will also stamp the time date here once the product is okayed. But more importantly, this life cycle is now being fulfilled. We know we've got the marketing copy, somebody's entered a size code, the product's approved. So now Pimberly can go off and generate these sizing charts. This process takes around 40 seconds and runs in the background. You don't need to do anything. But what this will result is, if they open the extra, extra large variant, those columns representing these different aspects and sizes on the shirt are now presented with real-time values for that particular shirt. So the XXL has a chest of 80, a waist of 75. As mentioned before, businesses themselves can configure these charts. They know what their customers are looking for. The customer can refer to us and say, these are the values that we want on our sizing charts, and we can go off and produce them. The templates themselves, if they don't have any already, they work with Pimberly and our print design team to produce these templates, or if they've got an existing list they want to bring into PIM, they can share those with us. We can create them in the background. It's also worth mentioning, as part of Pimberly's DAM, it's integrated as standard. These are inseparable. So here we're looking at images, JPEGs and PDFs, but this can be any media file. It's worth mentioning this because if this information was to change, let's say a user comes in and you've changed the product for whatever reason, maybe the material composition's changed or there's a different fit, a user can update those data sets and this will automatically produce these new sizing charts for us. Often might be the case as well, if you're taking information in from suppliers, then the customer might check and measure that product, or they might get feedback from customers and say this isn't correct. So they can log into the PIM, react quickly to the issue, update that data, and then all of these sizing charts are automatically renewed. And if you're publishing that across multiple web stores, Pimberly will do that for you. You don't have to log into the back end of each and make these changes manually. The PIM system, Pimberly in this instance, will automatically publish that for us and store those previous versions. So let's say you have updated the value, this one would get archived, and the new one would be set to the primary and sent to your main sales channels. Now, the value of this is if somebody comes back, maybe one of their customers makes a query on a product they bought 3 weeks ago, for example, they could go into the PIM and see what would that customer have had at the point of sale. So it gives them that governance and audit control on the product's change over time, which is an important part of the data to look after. So that's in terms of the sizing chart. Just to recap there quickly, a user's come into the system, selected the sizing code, that's been approved. The system knows we've gone through the right process and has gone off and generated these and automatically published them to the website. To give a feel on how these templates are produced, we can have channels out of Pimberly driving this data. So where I've got PDS here for washing machines, sofas, laptops and shoes, for example, we were looking at the formal shirt example, but you can have a variety of these templates set up within the Pimberly. And what's actually happening here is whenever any of those values are changed, this is being outputted to our design service, which is stored on AWS. So these things are getting generated automatically. And as I mentioned before, these can take 30 to 40 seconds to propagate and be stored against the product. So that's how it works from a user's perspective within Pimberly. But what does this mean for your own consumers on the store? So if I click across, you've got a different version of that website. Very similar, same product we were talking about before, but now we've got some sizing charts. So here, long sleeve shirt, same ones before with the same images. But the customers come to the site and they're saying, right, they're up at the parent level, they haven't picked a color yet, they haven't picked a size. So Pimberly's provided the top level parent chart that we talked about earlier. So within here, it's got all of those relevant dimensions. Again, can be configured to present whatever's important for you, for their customers. And you've got the data referencing what these different values mean on the shirt. But if the customer goes ahead and selects, for example, medium, the assets have changed. We've got that specific variant now. We've got the sizing chart that shows the information on the medium. So just as an example, if we zoom in on chest and waist, we've got chest at 65 centimeters, we've got waist at 60. The customer knows roughly what their dimensions are. They might think that's right for them, but they could click across and say, right, let's look at our large version. Pimberly's provided these to the back end of the web store, so that's now changed. And the customer can see, right, chest is now 70.4 centimeters, the waist is now 65. So this kind of brings us back to the start of this presentation. The customer knows which one's going to fit them and they can purchase the right one accordingly. At the end of the day, it's helping to drive confident consumers and reduce that product return rate. You're trying to stop them from ordering 3 or 4 versions of a shirt with the pure intention of sending 2 or 3 of them back once they've tested the right one on. They've come onto your web store, got the right information that they needed and purchased the right product, and it will fit and meet their requirements. So that was what I wanted to run through in terms of the demonstration itself. If I just jump back to the PowerPoint from before, I'd just like to thank you all for listening. If you've got any further questions, myself and my colleague Bruce Wright will be in the waiting room to answer any questions that you guys might have, and we look forward to those later. So thank you all for listening.